All right, and we're back. We're just gonna power on through the base color. Okay, so to start off our base color, we're gonna create a blend up here. Just up here, give ourselves some room, make sure we're somewhat lined up with our base color output. And we're gonna look for some uniform color here. I should probably spell it right. Copy paste because we need two of them. Plug this one into the middle, this one into the top. We're just getting things set up here. Alrighty, now this top one we're going to leave black, and this middle one we are going to change. How am I going to do this? I can color pick across computers. So one second, let me figure this out. Alright, I think it's just easier to input the values. So for the H, we're going to do 0.07. For the saturation, 475. And then for the V, we're going to do 425. Okay, this doesn't do anything, it seems like. Okay, so we're going to leave it like that. Okay, so now we need a mask to plug into the opacity down here. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull from this guy, which is after our first set of directional scratches. So we're going to pull from this guy, we're going to plug him into the opacity, and then we're going to get this. Obviously we don't want this, we want the inverse of this, so you could flip these guys, but I don't like this intermingling of spaghetti here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do it the hard way, and I'm just going to do an invert grayscale to invert the mask. Okay, and then we get black where there is no wood, and then the wood itself is having this base color here. Now just so that we can visualize it, we're going to plug it in. We're going to move this guy up here just in case we want to see it without color again. And look, it's already looking like wood. Amazing. Okay. Then we're going to do an HSL here. And then we're going to hold shift and click and drag. Please work. You're embarrassing me. Okay, it doesn't want to work. So we're just going to do this the hard way. We're going to drag from here. While holding, click the middle mouse button, like the scroll wheel, and then you can pan while selecting. Alright, move this guy over here. Now, after this blend, we're going to make another blend. Blends all the way. And then we're going to do HSL, and then plug this into the bottom, like so. And then we're going to change this HSL, and we're going to make this one a little bit darker. We're going to do 0.475 on the lightness. And for the opacity, we are going to pull from our random grayscale because we want to add some variation to our wood planks. We don't all want them to be the same color. We want them to be slightly darker and slightly brighter from each other. So we're going to make a connection there. We're going to plug it into the bottom here. We're going to move this over here. Okay. But in between that, we're going to add a auto levels, which is I don't think we've used this one before yet. But what this does basically, it makes use of the entire range between black and white. So if we create a connector here, don't do this part because it's just for visual. And I plug this into a levels. You can see here, if you look closely, there's some area at the start and at the end that has like this dashed line through it. That means that this specific texture that or this node that we're looking at does not utilize the entire range between 0 and 1. It uses stuff in between. What an auto level does, I'm going to put an auto levels after it and then do another level so we can visualize it again. So the original one doesn't use the entire range. What auto level does is it extends it so that it does utilize it. So then if we look at the levels afterwards, it doesn't have that dashed stuff because now it's utilizing the entire range of a from between 1 and 0. So what I'm doing here is let me shrink this again. I want to utilize the entire range. It's not a big difference, just a subtle difference, because I want them to be as varied as possible. So I can make sure they're more varied by increasing the range. Uh, a levels node also has a built-in auto levels if you hit this thing right here. So the level can do a lot of things, and there's some nodes that just do the specific thing. So you could just do a levels, and then you can hit this, and you'll see that. Let me undo that. If we go back again, you'll see that when I hit this, it'll move this to the edges. It'll be more precise than you trying to drag it over. So you hit that, and it auto ranges for you. So you can do it via auto levels or via this. Let's do it this way. I think this is more efficient in terms of memory or like performance. It's got a slower MS. I'm just gonna hit that. Okay. Then after this, we want to do another blend, of course. So now what do we have so far? Let's hide that. So we did our base color, our variation on the planks, and then anything that is not a plank is black. Okay, so let's move this down. Now this is where it starts to get a little fun. Now here, we're just gonna pick another color. And for this one, we're gonna do 0.075 for the hue, saturation 0.475, the lightness 0.5, and we're gonna plug this into the top. Now that's going to override everything because it's on the foreground and we don't have a mask, something plugged into the opacity. So for this, we are going to pull from the second set of noises from this guy. We're just going to make it, oops, from right here, we're going to make a connector. So I should probably label these just to make it a little easier. Now, I'm not going to put too much thought into it, so I'm just going to label them so that you guys know, kind of where we're at down the line. And I think it'll make it easier for you guys to track. And I'm putting them on the blends because every blend is like a little bit of detail. So I wasn't actually planning this, but I think this will be a good idea because I'm myself and getting lost. We'll call this one, even though we might not use all of them, but at least it'll give you a better idea where we're at. You can also change the color of these. All right. So we are going to be pulling from this guy from number 2. There we go. That makes it much easier to follow. Okay. Now from here, we're going to do a scan. Let's delete this connector by hitting backspace. If you hit delete, it'll delete the entire connection. Backspace just kind of removes it without breaking the connection. Now in this scan, we're going to do 0.25, sorry. And we're going to do a contrast of 0.5. Now I'm going to plug this in here so that we can see what's happening. Obviously nothing's happening because we need to invert this. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I am using this color on what's white. So on the edge, I want it to be a brighter color than the surface, like this top surface. So kind of like the wood has been chipped, so it's fresher. Now I want to make it a little bit softer, so I'm gonna add a little bit of a blur. And this is going to be very subtle because right now it's blurring it into oblivion. And we're going to do 0.125. And it's very subtle, so I'm going to turn it off and on. Now you can probably leave it on because it's almost like the wood has been chipped cleanly, but we're just going to make it a little bit of a blur. Maybe even just like 0.1. Okay, it's already starting to look a lot like wood, just from some basic colors. Now, we need to do another blend here. And we want to get rid of our holes here. Because we've lost our abyss, or basically what's under the wood planks. So we're going to change this to subtract. And we're going to subtract this stuff from the white mask. And we are going to pull from this guy. So we're going to pull out, oops, forgot to hit Alt. And then we're going to drag, so we're going to be using this guy a lot as well. And then we're going to put this here. And now here, we're subtracting. And now you can see here that we get that black back because it's coming through from the original one here. Just clean this up a little bit for you guys. And you guys should be keeping everything straight, everything clean. But I don't want to take too much time doing this cleanup stuff. All right. So then after that, we're going to start coloring that noisiness that we started adding. So like this detail here that you see, like these dips and crevices and kind of wood grain texture that we've applied, we want to start taking those masks and applying a color to them. So we're going to do another blend. And then we're going to take this guy here, and we're going to pull from this color. We're going to add an HSL. And then from that HSL, we're going to plug it into the top. And then for that HSL, we're just going to make it a little bit brighter. So we're going to do 0.51, which is a slightly brighter version than the previous one. Now we need a mask. So we are going to go down to number 3. This guy. And we want to pull from the bevel, not the levels, because the levels was adjusted for the wood grain depth. So if we increase this back up, then the wood grains go really far into the wood planks. We don't want that. We want to keep it subtle. But for this mask, we want to take the original value, which is this, and use that as our mask. So we're going to pull from it, and then we're going to plug it into a levels for now, just to hold it in place. Do that. And then we are going to do an auto levels again on this levels, because we want to bring the white back up. But actually, we're going to undo that for now. You can keep it auto leveled. I just want to show you something. And then we're going to plug that into the bottom. So if we turn this off and on, you can see it doing something here, but it's very subtle. So by doing the auto levels, we can make it more noticeable. Now, if you want to make it even more, then you can go back to this HSL here and then just go crazy. Maybe you want to do something more painterly and you want to like add some more funky colors like this, and then you want to play it with like how strong it is. You can lower this. I suggest you move this levels and not the opacity. You get more control here. So just lower this if you want. But I'm going to stick to the tutorial, so I'm going to do the autos here. And then just give this a 0.51 for the highlights. Or not really highlights, but the grain color. So if we hide, and then we bring it back, you can see the difference there. All right. So moving on, we're going to do the same thing. Do another blend. We are going to pull from up here. we're going to make another spaghetti line up here. And then from this one, we're going to do HSL. And we're keeping these connected because if we make a change to this color, it's going to make a change to all of these, which is very nice. Plug this into the top here. And then for this one, we're going to pull from the next one down the line. So if from this one we pulled from 3, this one we're pulling from 4. So what I'm trying to do here is line up the blends because, you know, whatever we did here is coming from, you know, here. So I'm trying to line this up with this one. So this would be like also number 3. But we can make this one red so that we know it's for base color. So then you kind of want these to match up. Not always, but it's nice for now just to kind of keep ourselves organized. So for this one, we're going to do 4. It's all about keeping organized because if you ever want to make a change later, if you're not organized, you're going to have a headache. Okay, so same thing for this one. We are going to pull not from the blur, obviously. We want to pull from the range here. Actually, am I looking at the right one? Let me check this. Okay, yeah, I'm just looking at too much spaghetti. I got spaghetti on my main monitor, spaghetti on my other computer, and then I'm actually eating spaghetti. So it's like a little confusing. Okay, so yeah, we are going to pull from the range. And we're going to pull again into our levels because we want control over this. We don't just want to take it for the same purpose that we used before. Because before we used it to, you know, subtract detail from the height. And then from this one, we want to use it for color. So they're slightly similar use, but at the same time, they're different. So we want to get as much control over it as we want, or as we can get. So we're going to do a levels. We're going to plug it into the bottom here. And then same thing, I'm going to auto levels this guy. And you can already see how much better this wood is looking. So if we turn this off, and then we turn it back on, we're layering on more and more detail. And actually, I was looking at the wrong levels. So what we did here is so if you look here, we're using a, actually let me fix some of this stuff, jeez. Okay, get some more of my room back. So here, we're using a lot of the range between 1 and 0, and we want to lower it a little bit. So I'm going to go into the values, and I'm going to do 0.32 up here. Okay, then for the next one, we're going to do 0.68. For the next one, 0.50, 0, and then 0.725. Now, there's no right or wrong here. You can just play with these to reach something you're happy with. So like, you know, maybe you want less of them to show up. Maybe you want more of them to show up. Maybe you want fewer. You want it to be stronger, less strong. That's up to you. Okay, and then we're gonna keep moving down. Do another blend here. We're gonna pull from this guy. Pull from this guy again. Do another HSL. Plug it into the top. And now we're going to be pulling from the next one down the line, which is 5. So let's move down a little bit so that we line up. Remember, keep yourselves organized. And from this one, we're going to pull from the scan from this guy because we don't want all of these. We want these specific ones because these are the ones that we subtracted from the planks. So before, after, before, after. And like I keep saying, it's all about layering. And then for this HSL, we're going to do 475. So this is going to be a little bit less saturated. like that. Add some more variation to our color, and we're gonna make them a little bit brighter, like that. Get some of them to pop. And then for our levels, everything stays the same, but I'm gonna just lower them a little bit. I think they're a little bit too strong. I want them to slightly blend in, so before, after. And I suggest you just play around with it and get it to look like yours, like whatever you want. Make it yours. Alrighty. Now, this is where the fun begins. It's gonna get a little bit funky here. Let's pull this out. Now here, we want to do another blend. And we're gonna do a normal and an ambient occlusion, HBAO, not the R1, because the R1's ray tracing and that's way more expensive. Now, let's do this. Yeah, we need to plug things into these guys. So for the ambient occlusion, we are going to pull from the very end because we wanted to apply everything that we've done, because ambient occlusion is basically like, you know, contact shadow, and we wanted to take account the slope. Right here you can see there's some shadowing on the slope, and the ones that are lower and higher in the height variation. Now we want to make the height depth 0.05, just to kind of make it a little bit softer. Leave everything else the same. Now for the normal, we are going to pull from before any of the slope or height variation changes. So from 5, because this is when they're all the same, they're all flat at the same height. So we want to do it here. So from 5, we're gonna now pull from 5, and connect that into our normal. Then we want to change our normal here to 5. Actually, I'll leave it at 1 first, and I'll show you why we're gonna change it. And then we're gonna do a curvature Sobel or Sobel, whatever you want to call it. And then from this, we're going to do a scan. And then from that, we're going to do a blur. And we'll play with them once I finish the train here. And then we're going to do our levels. And I'm going to plug this into the opacity. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to take from this output into the top. Well, actually, we need a HSL. There we go. Okay. And then we're going to make this HSL a less saturated and brighter color. So we're going to make it, so let's see what that looks like. We're going to make it brighter, 0.6. That's a lot brighter. And then saturation of 0.475. Now, nothing's really happening because this is black. So we're going to go back over here, and after our Sobel and our scan, we are going to do 0.35 and 0.75. Now what we're doing here is we're kind of focusing in on our highlights on the edges of our plank. Now, when we increase the intensity of the normal, let me just double click scan, but select normal once. And if we increase it, you can see that we're getting more of that detail from our normal. So if we look over here, this is 1, and then this is 5. So that translates through our Sobel here, which we can also have we can also accentuate it or exaggerate it. And for our Sobel, we're going to do 0.5. So that's the default. Great. We already set our scan. And then we don't want to blur this like crazy. We want to do subtle. So 0.15, quality of 1. And then for our levels, we're going to lower the intensity. But before we do that, we're just going to look at it. So if we hide this, this is what it looks like. If we bring it back on, you can see that we're highlighting the edges. Now you might like this, in which case you can just leave it. Maybe you don't like it and you want to soften it. So you can lower from the levels the level out high to your desired look. If you wanted to really pop or make it more subtle, you have that freedom here. I'm just going to do 0.75. And then if you want to make it more bright, so before, after. If you want to make it pop more, you can increase the lightness. You can make this normal intensity like 50. And when you increase the normal, you're basically catching more of the normal detail. So that's how you can control how much it's grabbing, because there's normal detail here, but at this value of 5, it doesn't pick it up as much. So you can see that there's still some of it here. And then by increasing this, like I said, it really picks up on it. We don't want that. I want it to be a little subtle, and I wanted to pick up mostly the hard edges of our plank, like the big ones. Now, the reason why we have this ambient occlusion here as well is because we are going to add a layer of dirt on top. So from here, we're going to type in dirt, and it's the first one here. And then, like we did with the other one, we need normal. Sorry, not normal. Curvature needs to go in curvature. And ambient needs to go in ambient occlusion, which is the first one, and then curvature goes on the second one. And you get this. Now let's just set this up real quick so that we can see the dirt doing its thing. Blend. And then we're going to do a uniform for our, this is going to be our, it's not really dirt, I guess. It's more like dust. So for our dust, we're going to do 0.075. And again, because this is your dust, you can do whatever kind of dust. Maybe you want it to be more like dirt and less like dust, but I guess as this is indoor, I'm going more with dust. Plug this into the top, of course. And then we're just gonna click out of here and just plug it in directly just for now. So like our previous example, this default dirt looks a little bit more realistic than it does stylized. So we're gonna tweak it. First, we're gonna change the grunge that it uses. We're gonna make our own custom grunge. So before we flip this boolean from false to true, we're gonna make our new noise. So we're gonna do a Perlin noise. Keep the scale 32. We're gonna pull from it into a slope blur, which we're pretty familiar with by now, and then we're gonna do a levels like so. And then we're going to do a Gaussian, which is similar to Perlin, but a little different. I don't really know how to explain it, but there's a big difference. We're going to plug this into the bottom of the slope blur, and then we're going to change our Gaussian noise to half, so 16. And then in the slope blur, we're going to increase our samples, and then we're going to lower our intensity to about 1.93. Now what I was trying to achieve is kind of like dust kind of accumulating in some areas and then kind of falling off with like a gradient. And then we're going to change this to min, like that. And then we're going to plug this into, well, there's no input for it yet because we got to change the boolean. So you'll see here that the dirt is going to change. So we're going to go use custom grunge, and then that'll give us a new input for grunge input. We're going to plug that in there. Now you can see that the dirt here is a little different than what it was before. Now there's still too much dirt or dust everywhere. So we're going to play around with our dirt values here in our dirt generator. We're going to do 0.7 And then for grunge amount, we're going to do 0.25. And then we're going to increase our dirt contrast to 0.75. So that'll tighten up the, so if we undo that, you can see here that we're increasing the contrast. So if you want it to be super, gradiently, but we're going to tighten it up, so we're going to do 0.75. Because I want it to kind of look like this, like it's accumulating in the crevices and the slopes and kind of building up there. Okay. Now, we want to get rid of this dirt in the crevices. If you want, you can leave it there like that, but I'm going to get rid of it there. So what I'm going to do is, what is this? Why is that there? I'm going to do a blend. And from this guy here, let me just move this stuff up here, get some room back. Is going to subtract. Is it subtract or is it multiply? Yeah, subtract. But first we want a scan. And then for this scan, I want to do 0.375. And then for the contrast, we're going to go all the way up because I just want to get the in-between stuff. Like that. So that means that the dust is not going to settle there. So wherever there's missing black, it's going to be black. But maybe we can make it a little bit more subtle. Like that. So let's change our contrast to 0.5. What was if we do 0? Could probably do 0. Yeah, let's do 0. Looks a little nicer. Okay. And then you can play around with this if you'd like. Like how much of it do you want it to expand to? So we'll do 375. And then we're going to do another levels here so that we have more control over how much the dirt is going to show. So here I just lowered it a little bit because I thought it was a little too strong. To 0.75 on the level out high. So before, after, before, after. Maybe you do want it to be that dusty. Then just keep this back up. And if you want the dust to show up more, you can also make it brighter. Play with it. And then we have one more blend to do here. Let me just see what it is. Actually, we don't need to because whatever I was going to do here, we kind of already did, which was had to do with this black blending in. So as usual, I like to do a little sharpen. I'm going to delete or backspace this HSL, but let me just bring it back. You can change the color of your woods here if you want. I don't recommend it unless you're doing very, very subtle changes. If you want to make everything maybe like a little bit more red, you can do like 0.495 and make your wood a little bit more red, but I wouldn't go too much more. Don't go like too crazy with the values because you're better off changing, for example, this. And then maybe like, oh, let's change the overall wood color. You're better off changing things like this than just doing like a blanket HSL at the very end. So like I said, I like to do a what's it called? Sharpen at the end of my base color. And if we get in real close, we can see what it does, what it do. So if we hide it, you can see it's a little blurry, and then when we sharpen it, kind of makes it a little bit more Gives it a little bit more oomph, which I think is nice, especially for wood, because we wanted to go for this harsh cut, harsh look. So I think adding this is very nice. So we went from gray to wood. Okay, that is the end of base color, and we're just gonna power on through to the roughness. See you guys in a bit.